Gen Z isn't drinking as much, and we're trying to figure out why. My name is Cameron Kasky from The Bulwark. I'm joined by my friend Chris Carden. And Chris, this is a personal issue for you.
It is, man. Nobody's drinking anymore, and it's breaking my heart. Thought we need to talk about it.
Yeah, Chris, at one point I asked him how many beers he thinks he's had in one night, what the most amount of beers he'd had in one night was. And he looked at me with these completely neutral, dead shark eyes and said, 1 million. So I pulled up some stats to talk about with Gen Z's lack of getting fucked up. But first, I wanted to play this video.
Yeah, nightclubs are dying, and here's why. I'm gonna hold your hand while I say this. Nobody wants a table anymore. Back in the day when on any given Wednesday, Rihanna and Kim Kardashian could be spotted shaking ass at a table, yeah, that's pretty cool. That definitely had a moment. But now, the bottles, the signs, the sparklers, ugh, boring. In 2024 alone, I partied in 17 different cities around the world. I also work in nightlife as a seasoned PR executive. So when I'm out, I do a lot of looking, I do a lot of field research, I ask a lot of questions. So this is not coming from just one market, this is a worldwide thing. Anyway, the conclusion is nobody's having fun at tables. Everyone is just like sitting there on their phones looking miserable. No one's dancing, no one's having fun. But here's the solution. If clubs just remove tables in the middle section and open that up as a dance floor, win-win. Right now, clubs, especially in LA, are so jam-packed with tables that you can't even mix and mingle. Like if you see a hot guy across the bar, you can't even shoot your shot because there's a bouncer in the way. Tables completely kill the vibe and you can't even go get a drink at the bar. Like it's just killing the revenue for the club. Speaking of bottles, vodka and tequila, like, ew, throw it away. Did y'all know that 67% of Gen Z doesn't even drink? Instead of wasting bottles, promoters should just hand out free drink tickets so that people can at least order what they want. My friend group is about 40 people and none of us have the exact same go-to drink. It just doesn't make sense for all of us to waste money on buying a bottle. We're on the subject of different drinks. If Gen Z isn't drinking, that's fine and cute. I love that. Have mocktails. Like you guys should be having non-alcoholic drink options in the bar.
Data from the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism indicates that alcohol consumption in the U.S. has risen overall. But research also shows that in the past year, drinking among young people began to decline, specifically around the year 2000. That means that such declines have especially impacted Gen Z, defined as anyone born from 1997 to 2012, and some millennials. A 2023 survey from Gallup found that the share of adults under 35 who say they ever drink dropped 10 percentage points in 2 decades to 62% from 72. So what do you think is going on? Why do you think people aren't drinking anymore?
I'm not sure, man. I think it has a number of things contributing to it. You know, I think a lot of people saw their parents. They saw the health problems. Maybe they saw that they didn't like the person that their elders became when they were drinking. But it's a shame, man. It's really a shame because it's having all these other effects. You know, not drinking is making people lonelier. You know, it's to quote a great actor, maybe one of the best out there right now, Mr. Walton Goggins, you know, it's a gateway to vulnerability. It's, you know, people have been using it to convene since like the dawn of time, you know, and she makes a good point that nobody's going out anymore. Nobody wants to.
Well, yeah, when she's talking about the table shit, that definitely speaks to what I think the primary reason for this is, which is people can't fucking afford it. Like, when I hear people talk about the way they're going to go out and party and the way they're going to go out and drink, one of the first things I hear is like, okay, so we need to get drunk before we get to the club so we don't have to pay club prices for drinks. But then it's like, you know, I think this is how the clubs think that they can stay open after all of nightlife and all of these types of spaces where people convene got fucked so hard during COVID. So I feel like financial insecurity is part of that, right? I mean, if you go out with your friends, you know, Chris specifically, I'm going to share some personal information about him, has enough friends who are bartenders that he normally gets some pretty friendly discounts at a variety of bars around the Los Angeles area. But generally, like, you know, when you're going out, I mean, how much is a group of friends spending on drinks just in one outing?
It can get pretty expensive, you know, especially if you're going hard. But, you know, you don't have to get a table per se, you know. You can, like you said, you can have plenty of drinks at home. There are plenty of dive bars where you can get a $4 to $5 beer, something like that. You know, in worst case scenario, people can still get a 6-pack and go over to your buddy's house. You know what I mean? You don't have to go and, you know, get a big table and do all that, you know, extra stuff. It's about being with your friends.
I'm sure I can find these stats somewhere, but I'm too lazy. I wonder what the weed consumption is, because I feel like another thing that might be lending to this is weed has gotten so strong that you can get into like an altered kind of wild mindset just from 2 hits of a joint. Whereas back in the day, you'd have to smoke quite a bit to get as fucked up on THC as you can right now. But do you think that, more access to weed across the board, dab pens and shit like that is lending itself to this?
I definitely think that's part of it. Yeah. I'm sure there's like an inverse relationship as to, their sales, their respective sales. And it's, they're opposites. You know what I mean? Alcohol makes you want to go out and talk to people, and weed makes you want to sit on your couch and, not say a word for 4 or 5 hours straight,
Well, I mean, I think this, but so I haven't drank or done drugs in over a year. I didn't have the self-control to manage it respectfully. So I said, I'm not going to do it at all, because when we would go out to drink, I would try to drink at your pace, and you are 6'5" and 600 pounds of raw muscle. And I weigh like 130 pounds and I'm 5'10". So when I would try to drink at pace with you, I would get so fucked up so quick that I would just be off the map for the rest of the night. And you were proud of me, right?
Of course. I respect the attempt, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's about the spirit more than it's about the actual tolerance. But weed, I would be able to smoke weed and go do stuff. Like, it didn't have that effect on me that it has on other people, where it taps them out for the night. Like weed, I was still able to go out and socialize and have a good time. So, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like with THC, it's sort of hard to measure the effect it's going to have on certain people. Because I know certain people where the first couple times they did it, it gave them a panic attack that made them never want to do it again. And then a couple years later, they tried it. It was the best experience of their life. And then with me, weed was so chill for me in the beginning. But then as the years went on, it started to make me increasingly anxious. So I feel like that's a hard thing to measure. But generally speaking, like, I don't know, there's a couple things with drinking culture that I think I think COVID kind of removed nightlife from our social maps and schedules. I mean, we're so much more antisocial as it is, drinking aside, we're more isolated and antisocial. But I feel like the pandemic made going out, while we were in these formative years of our social lives, it was less of a thing for us. We didn't treat going out like an inextricable part of socializing, and therefore drinking was one of the things that kind of fell by the wayside alongside that. Do you feel me?
I do. And I consider that sometimes. I was fortunate to be wrapping up at college when COVID was first setting in.
And you were in a fraternity, so you probably drank your fair share during college.
I did. Potentially more than my fair share, some might say.
Were you guys drinking before Brotherhood Boxing? Brotherhood Boxing is when the guys in the frat beat the shit out of each other. Of course.
We settle our beef. It's and of course, we drink during. We would do it on the same day as our Wade Bogs challenge.
Okay, I know the Wade Bogs challenge from It's Always Sunny, but for those in our audience who are unfamiliar with the Wade Bogs challenge, can you give them a quick outline?
You have to drink 2 30 racks of beer and eat a bucket of fried chicken in less than 24 hours, which is really in less than 12 hours, because nobody cares if you do it back home.
How many people at the frat were actually able to make it through that?
Make it through? In all of those attempts, we probably had 2 or 3 people do it.
Well, glory to those who have survived Wade Bogs. Chris, as Mr. Beer, can you drop like a couple pro drinking talking points?
Sure. As we talked about, it's a gateway to vulnerability and socializing. People use it to convene. I think we talked about how lonely Gen Z is, and I think they need to socialize more. I think they need to think less and frankly get laid more. And alcohol is a gateway to all of those things. I think it subsidizes a lot of what we have today. When I was working in hospitality, all I heard from my managers at these restaurants were that we need to break even on the food and make your money on your liquor. The bars is where the real profit margin is for these restaurants. So non-drinkers, in a way, are sort of freeloading on the drinkers, keeping these restaurants.
When I go to a restaurant, I'm just ripping these fuckers off.
Exactly. I'm subsidizing you, per se. Well, you and a couple other people probably, but you get the point. But it subsidizes restaurants. It's how they make their profit. And I think it's a gateway to creativity. You know, we don't see as many breakthroughs these days. With that Stanford professor, his name escapes me, just gave a talk about how hard new ideas are to come by. And I think that alcoholism was a source of that back in the day.
Well, everybody, if we get more drunk scientists, maybe we'll get some answers to a lot of life's questions that we just don't know. So before we wrap, because I have to go see Superman for the 5th time, the reasons that we kind of think Gen Z isn't drinking, and please add any if you think I'm missing something, is it's expensive. COVID took nightlife off our social map. And anything else you think? You said something about us seeing the health effects on our parents.
Yeah, I think people saw alcoholism and how it was portrayed, and saw it in maybe people close to them as they were growing up, and I'm sure that shaped some people's perception of it. They saw the ugly side of it, which doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah, you can either be a Chris Carden who drinks a lot, but for the size of his body, he drinks a responsible amount, or you could be a Cameron Kasky who drinks a Chris Carden amount of beer and therefore has to go home very early and send a bunch of text messages that he sees in the morning and says, oh my God, how do I take that back? Chris, thanks so much for joining today. Everybody, if you're going to drink responsibly. And if you aren't going to drink, be social anyway. Don't think you need to be drunk to be social. Walton Goggins makes a great point that it's a gateway to vulnerability. But you can also just be vulnerable anyway. Thank you, Walton Goggins. Thank you, Chris. Everybody, leave a comment down below. I don't really know what you would even say, but it's good for us in the algorithm. And we'll see you soon with more breaking news and cutting edge information. Thanks, Chris.
My pleasure, man.